My name is Wade Hudson, and I am President and CEO of Just Us Books, Inc., an independent children's book publishing company my wife Cheryl and I started in 1988. We established Just Us Books to address the need for more books that reflect our society's diversity. I will moderate today's discussion. But before we start, I would like to pay a little homage to a great writer we lost last week. Walter Dean Myers, winner of many of the awards available in children and young adult literature, produced a body of work that included more than 100 books for children and young adults. He often wrote about younger African Americans who battle troubles in the streets, in school, and at home, giving them a voice. Walter was also a leading advocate for diversity in children's literature. We will all miss this outstanding and wonderful writer and human being. Those interested in recognizing Walter by making a donation may do so by contributing to two of his favorite causes, the Children's Defense Fund and Literacy for Incarcerated Youth. And you can go to the Just Us Books website at www.justusbooks.com for more information about these two institutions. It was Walter's article titled, "Where Are the People of Color in Children's Books?" which appeared in a March 16, 2014 issue of the New York Times that brought renewed focus on an issue, lack of diversity in books for children, that received the spotlight from time to time, then slide underneath the covers again until another clarion call for change is voiced. But Walter's article was followed by an online campaign called "We Need Diverse Books," which took the internet by storm with more than 160 million impressions in just 1 week. A number of African American book creators are also undertaking initiatives to address the problem. The lack of diversity issue, it seems, would not go gently into that good night. Today's panel, Abundantly Rich, Harvesting the Wealth in Multicultural Book Publishing, will examine the issue of diversity in children's literature. But we will do so recognizing the complexities involved. Thus, our panel represents a cross-section of people and organizations that must and do play roles in finding solutions. Brian Kenney is director of the White Plains Public Library in White Plains, New York, and he is also former editor of School Library Journal. Will you just raise your hand, Brian? Pat Cummings is an award-winning author and illustrator whose career spans decades. She's seated next to Brian. Mutiya Vision is publisher of Vision Works Publishing, an independent book publisher that has made inroads into the educational market. Vanessa Lloyd Sgambati is CEO of the Literary Media Publishers Consultant, founders of the African American Children's Book Project, and she is actually seated next to Brian. And then we have Hanna, Erlich, who is Director of Marketing for Lee & Low Books, one of the nation's leading independent publishers of books for young people. And we have Veronica Creech, who is Director of Global Markets at First Book, a nonprofit organization that connects book publishers and community organizations to provide access to new books for children and young readers, particularly those who are in need. Now, we will start our discussion by giving each panelist a few minutes to share more information about their organization or their company and their program, and then we will follow that with some questions that we will ask the panel to respond to. And we'll start with Brian.
Thanks. Is this on? Can everyone hear me? Thanks so much, Wade. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a lifelong librarian, and two of our core values, I think, in terms of working with kids, are to engage children as readers, and a key element of that is to really find books that reflect the diversity of the community that you represent. I began my work as a librarian in the early 1980s in Brooklyn, New York, working for the Brooklyn Public Library. And I think we were just coming out of a really optimistic period in publishing. I mean, I was lucky enough to work in branches where we had on the shelves Virginia Hamilton, Jerry Pinkney, Walter Dean Myers, Mildred Taylor, authors like that that previous generations, even in a previous decade, did not have access to. And I think that we really thought back then that the world was really going to change. I was thinking of Walter Dean Myers, and he actually in 1986 wrote an essay that said, we thought we were going to change the industry. I think that since then, the industry has changed, but in many ways not as fast or as strongly or as comprehensively as many of us would like. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Vanessa?
Good morning. My name is Vanessa Lloyd Sgambati, and I am the CEO of the Literary Media and Publishing Consultant, as well as the founder of the African American Children's Book Project. I wear a lot of hats in the world of publishing. I sort of stumbled into the world of publishing in the 90s because African American fiction books had taken this country by storm, and publishers did not have anyone in-house who really understood how to market and promote these books. And voila, my company, the Literary Media and Publishing Consultants, was created. We did a lot of work in that area, and it was so fascinating to be on the cusp of all the wonderful authors, and most who are no longer being published. But Terry McMillan was at the top of that food chain of making people understand that reading, there was a joy in reading. Subsequently, as the publishing industry developed fiction books, especially for women, I started to see a void in the world of children's books. And 23 years ago, I founded an organization called the African American Children's Book Project. That cold, frosty morning, sounds like the beginning of a novel, over 250 people came to a children's book fair. This past February, over 3,500 people attended a one-day book event. In 2 hours, we sold over $25,000 worth of books. People come from all across the country, hungry for books that reflect their images. And I continue to say this to people, if you bring it to the community, they will come and they will respond. All across this country, you see a void in books in our community, not because people don't want to buy them, they just can't find them. So I'll be talking a little bit about this African American Children's Book Project and its success, as well as some of the things that we can do as consumers to keep publishers producing great books.
Pat?
Good morning, I'm Pat Cummings. I'm thrilled to be here at the Schomburg. I've done a lot of research here, so this is an excellent resource for writers and illustrators I know. When I started in children's book publishing, way back, thank you, Wade, in 1975, everybody, all of my professors, everybody at Pratt that I had as a teacher, and everybody around me was telling me it's impossible to get into children's books. You can't break into the field. But thankfully, I was 20-something years old, and you don't hear those kind of things. So I saw every publisher I could possibly see in town, and none of that worked. There was a publication called from the Council on Interracial Books for Children.
Right.
And this is someplace, too, that I believe Walter started. I had put some work into that publication, and a publisher that I had already been to see called me and said they had a book for me to do. Not a book they would like me to, to consider me for, but they wanted me to do it, and I was thrilled. And I didn't want to act like I didn't know anything about doing books. And so when the editor said, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes." And I didn't have a clue. So I went home, and I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who used to date Tom Feelings. And so I called him up, and I said, "Tom, you have to help me out. I don't know what I'm doing." And he was extremely generous.
Yeah.
And one thing I found was because I came in on a wave of Tom Feeling and Jerry Pinkney and Virginia Hamilton and Mildred Pitts Walter, and so there was a real interest in growing the number of people of color in the children's book field, because the percentages were so low at the time. Of all the books that were being done, the people of color were really underrepresented. And from what I understand, the numbers haven't really changed in all those years. This is from 75. I sat on a panel in the mid-'80s with Mildred Pitts Walter, John Steptoe, and Walter Dean Myers that was called a multicultural panel, but we were all black. And I thought, it's not exactly multi, you know? But, so in that sense, it has changed. People have become more aware that there needs to be diversity. One thing that Walter said to me that I thought